Welcome to West Country Wanderings and welcome to Weston-Super-Mare. This is the first time I've been to Weston in the county of North Somerset, about 25-30 miles to the south of the city of Bristol here. Got the train here. The main reason I've come here today is to look at one of the piers. Weston-Super-Mare has two piers. The Grand Pier, which was restored following a fire a number of years ago now. Perhaps we'll have a look at that. But I want to take some photographs, so this will be a part photography video looking at Birnbeck Pier. Now, I remember going on Birnbeck Pier with my grandmother in the late 1980s, and just a few years after I went on the pier there, sadly the pier was closed because it was deemed to be unsafe. It was then bought by a private developer who's going to spend lots of money developing hotels, restoring the pier, all that sort of thing, because it goes out to a hotel. There's also an R&LI slipway there as well. Sadly, none of those plans materialised and the pier fell into disrepair, had a number of fires on it. Well, glad to report that North Somerset Council has now bought Birnbeck Pier and plans to restore it, similar to what Clevedon Pier, which I did a video about a few weeks ago. If you want to check that one out, I'll put a link in for that one as well. But we're going to have a tour here, have a tour of the town too, so I hope you can join me here in a very windy and blustery Weston-Super-Mare. One of the sad things I learned about Weston recently was that this fabulous Art Deco cinema closed. It was an Odeon cinema, and inside it contains a rare surviving example of a Wurlitzer organ that was put in the 1930s. What's going to happen to that organ now? I don't know, but yeah, it's sad to see this. I remember going to see quite a few films here when I was based at nearby RAF Locking in the 1980s. Now this here reminds me of the Bude light in Cornwall. I'm not sure what it's supposed to represent, but obviously the best effect of it would be at night time when it's presumably all lit up. So that over there is looking towards Brean Down. I also made a video about Brean Down recently. I hope to go back there to get to the fort. It was very, very windy when I was on the top of that. But we're going to head, to start with anyway, here, which is the Grand Pier. So it's £1, just £1 coin to get onto the pier. And obviously it helps to keep the upkeep. I don't mind paying just £1. But yeah, it affords you great views. It's got to be done, isn't it? Unfortunately, Birnbeck Pier, which is where we're going to go over to, it's the other side of that headland you can see just over there. That's where we're going to be heading next. Now, this is the expanse of Weston-Super-Mare's beach, and I've said before, this area has the highest tidal range, or rather the largest tidal range anywhere in the world. And as you can see, the sea goes out a very, very long way. But of course it means it also comes in a long way too. We're hoping to be here for the full day today, so we'll probably see it change and come in closer to the shoreline. Now, despite it being a very windy day, but also in July, it's very quiet for a July. I've been to other resorts. I remember going to Clevedon back in May, and it was a lot busier than here in Weston-Super-Mare. Yes, so I've got my strap on there today because it's most definitely needed in these windy conditions. Very, very different sort of weather to when I was walking along the Severn Way. As I say, this is the first time I've been to Weston-Super-Mare since the 1980s. Weston-Super-Mare does have a lot of social problems and anti-social problems, and I think that's what's prevented me from coming here. It's kind of put me off, and I don't generally do urban areas either, but where we're heading later, I think you'll see more greenery. We're going to be heading into some woods there, Western Woods, overlooking down towards Sand Bay. And what prompted me to come here was watching a fellow YouTuber, well, a couple of fellow YouTubers. Louise from Southwest Sundays has done a couple of videos from Weston, including one at the, what wasn't it? It was at the old aquarium place, wasn't it? When you had that giant modern art installation there, which was kind of quite controversial. And also Jess's Grand Day Out did a video recently over at Sand Bay, and that combined with the fact that the pier at Birnbeck Pier is going to be restored, I thought I really need to catch a train to Weston today to get some shots of that. Although the weather is likely to be quite rainy, quite windy, it is likely to brighten up later this afternoon going into the early evening, which does mean for photography we should be able to get some good lighting conditions too. Sunny days tend to give you, particularly in the summer, very, very flat light, not great for photography. So fingers crossed we might get some reasonable shots later on today. And as you can see, this is a very, very different pier to the one we saw at Clevedon. This is a much more commercial orientated operation here. So I've just come into this shelter bit here. We've got glass around here, or glass or perspex anyway. It's very, very windy out there at the moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here for a cup of tea, quick snack, and then I'm going to swap over cameras, going to do some photographs of the pier, and then we're going to head out in the direction of Westonwood, Sand Bay and Birnbeck Pier. Well, it's very fragmented filming today because storm's just passed over. I had to put all my camera equipment away. Just come underneath this tree here. You can probably see the very dark skies heading over back towards Weston Town Centre there. This here is Marine Lake, which is like a tidal pool, again similar to what was seen previously over at Bude in Cornwall. I'm still making my way, dodging the showers, towards Birnbeck Island. So the rain stopped just for a little bit, and I've now come round to Birnbeck Cove, and that's our first clear sight of Birnbeck Pier. Excuse the wobbly footage here, it's very windy. It's up to about 40-mile-an-hour winds trying to hold the selfie stick, but I managed to put my telephoto lens on a rock and sit down and rested it. So I got some still telephoto video shots looking across to Birnbeck Pier and what remains of the RNLI slipway, and I took some black and white photographs to share that with you now. So I'm going to continue the walk round now to see if we can get round towards Weston Woods and the other side of Birnbeck Island and Birnbeck Pier to get some shots of it from the other side. So see you in a bit. Now the sun has decided to make an appearance, but of course the wind is still very, very gusty here. There's a container ship in front of me, in fact, just here. And this is part of the Friends of the Birnbeck Pier Restoration Trust, bit of a mouthful. I think it's open weekends to give people information about what the projects and the plans are to restore this wonderful pier. Anyway, I'm going to climb up some gardens. There's some walk terrace gardens just beyond here, and then I'm going to change my lens over again to get some more shots. Well, I've come round now to Weston Woods, heading towards Sand Bay. And while I'm walking through the woods, because it's less windy than what it is looking down at Birnbeck Pier, I'll tell you a little bit about the pier itself. It was actually designed and opened by one Eugenius Birch in 1867. Some tea roots were added to the side of it in 1898. And the whole lot was closed in 1994 following a storm and a safety inspection. It's unique because it's the only pier in the United Kingdom that connects the mainland to an island on it. And it's one of only 6 piers in the entire United Kingdom that is Grade 2 listed. And as I say, it'd be fantastic to see that completely restored once more. Birnbeck Pier has a fascinating history too. In 1940, it was commissioned as HMS Birnbeck by the Ministry of Defence. And it was used partially for experimentation with Barnes Wallis's bouncing bomb. I'm not quite sure how the configuration of the pier and the bouncing bomb worked though. I don't know if papers on that have ever been released by the MOD, but if you do know more about the bouncing bomb and Birnbeck Pier, please drop a comment the usual way below, because it sounds really interesting. The other thing that Birnbeck Pier is famous for is the steamer ships coming across from South Wales, and I think the last passenger steamer landed at Birnbeck Pier, or Birnbeck Island, in 1979. Now, the designer of Birnbeck Pier, one Eugenius Birch, was born on the 20th June 1818 in Shoreditch, in the east part of the capital, London of course. He attended school though in Brighton on the coast, and that perhaps is why he was fascinated by coastal history. He was also really interested in major civil engineering projects. Eugenius Birch graduated from the ICE, the Institute of Civil Engineers, in 1839. He worked on major engineering projects, including building part of the Indian Railways. However, closer in the West Country Wanderings region, he also engineered Ilfracombe Harbour and the Devon and Somerset Railway. Also, he worked on, of course, Brighton Pier, but most famously, Eastbourne Pier, which is perhaps his best known work. But here in Weston-Super-Mare, the Birnbeck Pier lives on with his name and the stunning piece of architecture that it once was, and hopefully will be once again. Now, the standout piece for me is the clock tower, and I'd love to see that restored. That wasn't built by Eugene Birch, but one Hans Fowler Price, who was a local man from Bristol. And he did lots of architecture work in and around North Somerset, including lots of the brilliant buildings in Clevedon, some of which we've seen previously on the channel. But yes, that clock tower is attributed to him. It wouldn't be fantastic to see that face in that clock tower again and be able to take a cream tea sat underneath it, looking at the cross at the Bristol Channel. Now, though the rain has stopped, it's been replaced by a very, very vicious wind, which has actually been physically forcing the sand into my mouth. You can actually taste the grit and the salt as it's whacking it through my mouth and up my nostrils. It's so very, very gusty here, and quite unpleasant too. So I've now caught the bus back into the town centre of Weston-Super-Mare. It was a coaster bus, but it wasn't one of the open top ones. I think they alternate. They run every half an hour from Sand Bay. And yes, it was really, really difficult there because of the high winds there today to be able to do much filming or any pieces of camera, because you've got all those flecks of sand that are being thrown to you because of the very, very strong winds. Anyway, what I'm going to do now, continue the tour here, doing some street photography around Weston. Well, I hope you enjoyed that short street photography around Weston-Super-Mare. Been challenging today with the weather, particularly the windy conditions more than the rain. The rain's eased off this afternoon. I've come into Grove Park, and in particular I've come into Jill's Memorial Garden. This garden was created by the BBC Ground Force team in 2001 to commemorate the life of one Jill Dando, who was sadly murdered on the footsteps of her home in West London. I think it was either 1997 or 1998, I'll put it in below. And Jill Dando was originally from this town here in Weston-Super-Mare. Really interesting town. Sometimes it gets a lot of bad press. It's gone through some very, very tough times, Weston-Super-Mare, and it does have a lot of challenges, social challenges as well. But it's a really interesting town to visit, and I particularly enjoyed visiting and seeing again Birnbeck Pier after all these years again from back in the 1980s when I remember walking along it with my grandmother. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the tour today. It'll be wonderful to see restored. And when the restoration starts, I will come back here again to show you the progress of that. Until next time on West Country Wanderings, take care of yourselves, look after yourselves, and I hope to see you on the channel again very, very soon. All the best for now. Cheers now. Goodbye.